is the place we go to worship and for spiritual support. But church may not be the best place to share your medical condition, particularly if you are a person living with HIV. Hello and welcome to Can Community Health. I'm Alex Redmond. We are joined by a pastor on a mission to erase stigma in the community. Pastor John Walker partners with Can Community Health, educating the public about HIV and in particular the Newtown community of Sarasota. Welcome to the show, Dr. Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I always have a disclaimer that I always state. Is that I don't represent the African American community in the sense that some people always think that when they get a person there, that person speaks for all. And I don't say it I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it in a positive way, because the community haven't given me the I haven't been
given the license to represent,
or ordained,
sure.
rather, ordained to do that. But I speak through the lens of my community. I speak through the lens of an African American in the community, and I speak as a pastor in this community. So if I represent anyone, I represent John Wesley Walker Jr., and I represent Bethel Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, and in a sense, the community at large, unofficially. So.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you partner with CAN and your church, where you do it and how you do it to help people in the community.
The issue of HIV and AIDS have really been a concern of mine. I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, where when the AIDS epidemic really came out and it was stigmatized that it was a white male disease. And no one understood what it was about, not even myself. But as we grow, we do better, and we try to do better. And what this have done, even in the past, I have been involved in churches that I pastored in other places, because in Methodist Church we are itinerant, so we move around. So wherever I go, we try to educate the people about HIV and AIDS, and particularly when we found out that it was African American women who at one point were the largest population in the community that contracted HIV and AIDS. And for a long time, again, it was something that we closed our eyes to, or closed our ears to, and we didn't want to address it.
Why do you think that is? Or has anyone ever spoken to you about why women, particularly African American women, are getting HIV?
Many of the women who are contracting HIV and AIDS are women who have men who have been incarcerated. They have homosexual sex while being incarcerated, and they come out to their wives, their girlfriends, and they have sex with them. And here again, now they're contracting the HIV virus. And then at the same time, intravenous drug use, some of the causes of contracting HIV and AIDS is part of that.
So you think part of the problem is because the women out there are just not maybe the men that are incarcerated, or maybe a man that is in a gay relationship isn't sharing that information with the woman that he's with and giving her the opportunity to protect herself.
Exactly. And some years ago, there was it came out what they call a down low, particularly African American males who were either bi or homosexual, not sharing that with their partners. And so now you have a community, or a particular part of the population of the community who is unaware that they have contracted AIDS, and now some of them who've been promiscuous or whatever, sleeping with other people, other men, and now the disease has spread. So because of the moral issue, it becomes a stigma in our communities. It becomes a stigma in our churches.
Why is it stigmatized in church? And is there a problem with it being stigmatized in church?
Well, it goes back to the biblical text, the interpretation of the text. It's an abomination. It's, and you may not agree with the lifestyle, but I think one of the problems is, and what the church needs to recognize, is that it's a health issue. Okay, put away the morality. it's about health. And ignorance might be bliss, but ignorance is also dangerous. So if we are ignorant about the fact that this is causing people to die, regardless of what your morality and some people will place punishment on an individual, saying this is God's punishment on them. But if you come from a theological perspective, and there are many, or a Christological perspective, in that I tend, and this is where we evolve, and this is how the church became involved with it, and I become involved with it, is that personally I look at what Christ did or what Jesus did. You know, a few years ago we would always ask the rhetorical question, what would Jesus do? Well, we know what Jesus would do. Okay, Jesus touched the lepers when it was not common to do. He touched the woman who was hemorrhaging or was menstrual cycle for 12 years. She was unclean, or she touched him. We see where he goes into graveyards and touch dead folk, okay, and bring them back to life, which was not part of their culture. And when I look at that, I said, well, where are the untouchables in our society today? Who are the ones that Jesus would touch today? Who are the ones that Jesus would go to today? He would go to the ones who have HIV and AIDS. Polio at one time was a stigma. Cancer is getting out of its stigma.
Yes. I remember there was a time not so long ago where people would whisper the words, I have cancer.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden that became okay, because it is a medical condition.
Yes.
And the thing is that you can get HIV from so many different things. You can get it from IV drug use. You can get it from sexual relations. You can get it from a number of things. There's so many ways.
Yes.
And
yes.
the whole point is that there's no good HIV and bad HIV, whether somebody got it from a first time, because you can catch it the first time that you engage in being intimate with somebody. So we need to stop blaming people. How is the church responding to the call for action to help end HIV transmissions?
Well, one of the things the church that I belong to, the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, have endorsed the initiative by the NAACP to go out and educate the African American community or the communities at large about HIV and AIDS. I'm so proud of Bethel because we are ahead of them in that, because we have already started testing right there at the church. We have the mobile van that comes out from Cannes to test people in the community, congregants. I have been tested myself, and I don't see any harm in that. It's just like going in and getting my blood test for whatever my physician requires.
When you get tested, do you go out there and get tested when the mobile unit is there and let people know that, hey, I'm getting a test today and maybe you want to come with me and get a test?
Exactly.
That's good. Did it hurt?
I mean,
it's a fingerprint. It is a fingerprint.
No, it didn't hurt at all.
No, you're a good man. I know it didn't hurt.
Yes. Yeah. Nah, it didn't hurt at all. And just by doing that, not only does it show leadership in our communities, but it shows that we are not afraid of even if by chance I have the virus. I'm not afraid to say this is my illness, this is my sickness. I haven't done anything to be a part of that. Maybe when I had a surgery, maybe I got a bad blood transfusion. So yeah, I have done things that I could have contracted HIV or AIDS by having that surgery and having a blood placed in my veins. However, we need to stop closing our eyes to the fact that people are dying all around us.
And a big part of this, too, is when you get tested, you can get diagnosed, and then you can get treated.
Yes.
And if you are in treatment, it can bring your viral load way, way down.
Yes.
And it makes it a lot harder to actually transmit the HIV virus. So why would you not want to know? And then you can get in treatment, you can live a long time, and be as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
And it also helps you to stop spreading HIV throughout the community. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
But we're actually going to go ahead and take a little break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we will continue our discussion of how we can make the church and community a place that welcomes all people, including those living with HIV, hepatitis C, and other STDs. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Florida is #1 for beaches.
The Sunshine State also leads the nation for new HIV cases.
The opioid epidemic makes the fight against HIV and hepatitis C more challenging.
Minorities, women, young people,
And seniors are most affected by HIV.
But you can get tested.
You can get diagnosed.
And you can get treated.
TAN offers hope.
For information, call or visit us online.
Seniors, this one's for you. I'm Bob Trissolini. We don't talk about it, but seniors are at a high risk for HIV, hepatitis C, and other sexually transmitted diseases. You know that little blue pill that kind of puts us in the mood? Well, sometimes we don't practice safe sex. Many are walking around with HIV and Hep C and don't even know it. So protect yourself. You can get tested, you can get diagnosed, and you can be treated.
CAN Community Health. Welcome back to CAN Community Health. I'm Alex Redmond. We are talking about stigma in the church and HIV, solutions to make the change with Pastor John Walker of Bethel CME Church. Well, we're so happy to have you because it's something that you don't really talk about is HIV and the church in one sentence.
Yes.
And we need to change that a little bit so we can stop HIV transmissions.
Yes.
So I would ask you about stigma within the church and how bad can it get? What's the kind of environment in the church? Because we think of church as a safe place to go,
Right.
where people should be able to disclose anything about themselves and feel welcome. But why is that not so?
The church is a sanctuary, should be a sanctuary. However, because of cultural biases, because of uninformed interpretation of biblical text, and or a combination of them both, is that stigmas become, and particularly like I said, through the lens of an African American and an African American community, a lot of things that are stigmatized today go way back.
Let's talk about it.
When, so let's say homosexuals in our community, you would never talk about that.
Why is there such a stigma with being gay or homosexuality within the Black community? Give us a little insight.
It's not normal, and particularly, the African American community is very steep in its faith tradition, being Christian, and some of the interpretations that we receive primarily from Eurocentric interpretations of the text. That fire and brimstone type of teaching and preaching has been embedded and engraved in a lot of faith traditions, or in the Christian community in particular. To go beyond that is to be liberal. To be accepting is to be liberal. What's wrong with the word liberal? I mean, what's wrong with being liberal? It's okay. I'm conservative in some regards and liberal in others. However, when it comes to the stigmatizing of individuals in the community, this is not the norm.
Is there a certain thing that has to do with machismo within the Black community too?
Well,
or not so much?
Not so much. Maybe in the past, because let's go. We can go way back to the past and how Black men were treated, during slavery, during the Reconstruction period. I mean, all of this stuff goes back to, in our community, we talk about PTSD. Being Black is having PTSD. Post-traumatic stress from what has happened from the past, and looking at it through our lens, many of my Caucasian friends can't understand, and I appreciate them coming to me asking why. So when we're asking about the stigmas about, homosexuality, look, young ladies, we're giving baby showers for teenage mothers now, when back then, if a teenager got pregnant, she was shipped off.
Well, that's because we're not teaching HIV in a lot of the schools in Florida, because the schools are talking about abstinence only. So would you say that teenage motherhood is now a byproduct of not being able to be educated within the school system? So we're withholding education from, do you think that certain groups of people have less access to that information and education too?
Oh yeah. I mean, the school systems have all, in a sense, have always been a way of systemically holding down groups of people. You know, when my mom was going through school, you know, we hear the stories of how they got secondhand books and how they had to make it through different things, and then the quality of the teachers, the quality of the materials that students get, and then, you know, in a way, it appears that one is trying to state that it's equal, but it's not. You know, when we see some of the things that are, or the monies that are being afforded some of these students, or these schools rather, and we see the other side where they have better materials, better equipment, better, you know, definitely from the schools.
But getting back to HIV in particular, and other STDs and preventing pregnancy and all of that, we know now that from your word that the school is a problem, and we have addressed this on other shows as well. But let's go back to church. And how could somebody, give me a scenario of somebody being gossiped about or maybe discriminated against because of their HIV status. Can you give us a couple of stories about the way things may have gone or things you've witnessed?
Now, I'm glad you went back to the church and not the school where I'm more.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah, you know, here again, it goes back to the community. It goes back to the stigmas of past oppression from the white community or what other communities that was oppressing people of color. Now, just say people of color.
But what about being discriminated in church? Say somebody goes to,
that's what I'm gonna get to.
Okay.
Is that because it comes from that? It comes from that because church don't teach about love. Church don't teach about forgiveness, except for those who are, quote, obedient in terms, or agree with what I believe. I may not agree with your lifestyle, I may not agree, but bottom line is, it's going back to God created humankind in God's image. So if I see you in a way that is demeaning, or if I want to put you down, in some places, church is the only place where people have what they think is authority and power, or a way to oppress other people because they have been oppressed for so long, or they have been oppressed all week long. So now I can come in and point my fingers at someone I don't agree with, I don't like their lifestyle, but the thing...
So do you think then that the church, what you're saying is that the church is somewhat of a gossipy, a little bit of a judgy place and a little cliquey?
It can be.
How can we change that? Because you're a man that's on a mission to change that.
It's difficult. I stay on my knees. I go to sleep on my knees. It can't happen overnight. And first of all, going back to the church, we have to realize that the church is the people and not the building. We have to realize that there is God, who is the great creator of all humankind. And those who are in the Christian community believe that Jesus is the savior of humankind. But going back to the church and Bethel in particular, how we got involved and how we can make these changes is to know that God did create everybody in God's image. We have to be a holistic church and not just to try to get to heaven church, a church where, you know, I got to get my golden crown, my long white robe, I got to get to glory. And we got to deal with what's going on right now. We have to be holistic. We have to be a church that addresses the stigmas that are affecting people. We have to be a church that deals with helping save physical lives while we point them to the one who can help them and help them save their spiritual being.
So do you think that instead of saying that this person is bad because they do that behavior, or this person's bad because I saw them standing by the testing mobile unit, that we should just say, you know, I'm not going to judge, and I'm there for you to support you. That would be a better church.
Exactly. Because first of all, I got to get theological on you. First of all, we read the text, and everybody else say it. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Okay, that means nobody's perfect.
Agreed.
Okay. The one passage that a lot of people like to say, especially when they found out that they have been pointed out, is that he who's without sin cast the first stone. Okay. Bottom line is we got to look at humanity as being a part of God's creation. Put aside your differences, put aside your pettiness, and let's help heal people physically and let God heal them spiritually.
Because we shouldn't be the ones that are judging people,
No.
because after all, that is who
Right.
God is.
I don't have a heaven or hell to put anybody in. And who's to say that my helping someone with HIV, or my helping someone who's homeless or who don't have any clothing, who to say that that's not the same? It is the same. I'm helping the downtrodden. I'm helping the disenfranchised. And when I look at what Jesus did, and I'm not asking a rhetorical question, I see what Jesus did when I read the Gospels. That's what I want to emulate.
All right, well, for more information on Can Community Health's HIV testing locations, because we do have some of those set up for you at Bethel CME Church, visit our Facebook page or go to cancommunityhealth.org. That's cancommunityhealth.org, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dickie Smothers. You may know me as one of the Smothers brothers, and then again, maybe not. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk to you about something serious. Hepatitis C. No laughing matter. It can lead to cirrhosis of the liver, even liver cancer. Baby boomers are most at risk. You could have Hep C and not even know it. You can get tested, you can get diagnosed, and you can get treated. Hep C can now be cured.
For information, call or visit cancommunityhealth.org. Florida is #1 for beaches.
The Sunshine State also leads the nation for new HIV cases.
The opioid epidemic makes the fight against HIV and hepatitis C more challenging.
Minorities, women, young people,
And seniors are most affected by HIV.
But you can get tested.
You can get diagnosed.
and you can get treated.
CAN offers hope.
For information, call or visit us online. Welcome back to Can Community Health, and we've been talking with Pastor John Walker of Bethel CME Church. And we are now also joined by Reverend Demetrius Chifunza. He's a board member of Can Community Health, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm a pastor of actually 2 churches, Mount Olive CME Church and Mount Calvary CME Church. I serve as the chair of the strategic planning in Can. So that's why it's an honor to be here and sharing information with you today.
So we know that testing for HIV, Hep C, and other STDs saves lives. So
Right.
what is the church, and how is the church partnering up with CAN? Give us a little inside view as to what you do.
Well, right now I know CAN is partnering with the church that he pastors as well, that does testing and provides education. And that's what we're trying to do throughout the various cities that CAN does provide testing in.
In a perfect scenario with the church, what would you do? How would you set it up that CAN works with the church?
Well, by being a part of CAN, I share the information that I receive by being on the board, the statistics, the numbers, and the high rate of the disease that's going in the community.
Let's talk a little bit about stigma within the church, because of course Dr. Walker really shed some light on the problem, and particularly in the African American community within
Right.
the church. How bad is it when it comes to stigma and not being able to share the fact that you're concerned you might want to get a test, or maybe that you're gay and telling a parent or
Right.
someone else? And what can we do about it?
Well, the first thing is the stigma is really bad to the African American community, simply because that no one wants to feel as an outside. History has shown that once you come out and you may share something that you may have, such as HIV or any type of STD, the community kind of shuns you a little bit. That's been the history of the African American community. It's been a long-going fight of trying to change that stigma. We are being successful in doing it, and the church has been a big help because. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I want to state that many African American churches, and particularly progressive African American churches, have gone beyond the stigmatism
Right.
that have been embedded in their theology for over the years.
Right.
When I mean that, because in the Enlightenment that many of our scholars have in terms of sharing that information to the rest of the community, we see that we see God through our lens now, and not a Eurocentric lens. And the God that we see is an embracing God, an encompassing God, a God that doesn't look at individuals as their with their infirmity, so to speak, but one who is there to heal.
Right.
Demetrius, how do you get people on board with going out there, and particularly parents that may think that their child may be at risk, and being comfortable about talking?
Well, I just be honest with them as much as I can. The first thing I tell them that you should not be afraid. You should not be afraid to discuss or speak about anything, especially in a situation such as this.
And especially in the church.
Especially in the church.
Shouldn't church be the place where you are welcome, where you should be able to tell everything and have support?
Yeah, you would think that. But you got to understand that since the church is comprised of people, the people are the church, this is what you're dealing with, people. And it takes the leaders of the church to stand bold before the church and say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. We're trying to bring awareness. There's nothing wrong with this. And the only way that we can get past this is to talk about it.
I'm going to ask you something. I actually wrote down my question because I think it's a pretty good question here. Many political pundits characterize the African American community as more socially conservative than the average American. True, right? Do you believe that to be the case? And if so, why? More socially conservative in the African American community.
I look at it in two ways, in two parts. I mean, historically, I would lean towards saying yes to that. But see, we're changing now. It's been a complete change. And when we just look at statistics and so forth, I'm a big proponent of statistics, but that does not always give the overall picture. I look at the bigger picture. Is there enough care? Is there enough treatment? Do we have enough resources there? And now that we do have enough resources there, we're kind of changing the narrative.
And we are almost out of time, gentlemen, so what's the one call to action that you would say? We have very little time left.
You want me to go first? The call to action is we need to stop looking at the infirmities or being stigmatized because of a person's sexual preference or any other of these things that we want to hold people down on. Going back to scripture, we all have sinned and fallen short. Is that an excuse? No. But what I'm saying is this: God created you, God created humankind in God's image, and in order to be human, you got to see the humanity in that other person.
Exactly. And I would like to just share that we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different situations. We should celebrate that information. But the biggest thing is to educate each other. Do not be afraid of education. And as long as you're educating one another, that is how we overcome the stigma.
Strength definitely comes in numbers, especially when it's education.
Exactly.
Well, you can be the one to make the difference and erase stigma. We want to thank you for watching CAN Community Health, and we will see you next time.